only on SportsGrid.
Great.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is FST, Fantasy Sports Today. My name is Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place if you want to dominate. Whether it be season-long, DFS, straight-up wagering, whatever it is, we have you covered. Right now, we are giving you the most comprehensive and easily digestible look ahead to the football season. We have the man, the author of the Fantasy Black Book, Joe Pisapia, the man that writes the quarterback rankings, the man that has come up with the ECO, the ecosystem, to tell you which teams have a better offense than others, to help you wager, to help you draft. But the most important thing that Joe can give us is the insight. Joe, welcome in. Let's look at NFL team futures using your mindset, using the tools that we learn in the Black Book. How can we possibly take advantage? A lot of plus money on the board. We got to pick the right ones.
It sure is. And this is a great time for investments early in NFL because sure, injuries still can happen, but buzz will start to change these numbers. And they're trying to get you early on to be tempted to make some wagers. And guess what?
Sure.
Color me tempted. I am tempted already. I'm looking here at the AFC, and I think Kansas City is a team on a mission. And I think the most important thing is continuity. When you're looking at the NFL, so many teams have so much turnover. We were joking before in the first hour that, in our lifetimes, there's been 3 coaches for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, in a lot of people's lifetimes, there's been 1 coach for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's been Andy Reid for a lot of young people watching football. So I think you're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs at plus 370. I think it's still very investable. When you're looking at the rest of this board in the AFC, the Ravens last year, they kind of had everything right there for the taking. Adding Derrick Henry, I think, does help quite a bit.
Yes.
And it does take a little bit of pressure. I know that Lamar Jackson is coming into camp even lighter than last year. That's 2 years in a row where that's happening. That concerns me a little bit, to be honest with you. Like, to be able to go through an entire season at 205 or whatever he is now, getting the kind of hits that he might take out there because of the style of football he plays. The Cincinnati Bengals at plus 700 are really interesting because I think if there's one kryptonite to the Kansas City Chiefs over the years, it's kind of been the Bengals. They are not intimidated. Joe Burrow is not impressed, okay? Joe Burrow will steal your girl. Joe Burrow will steal your ring. Joe Burrow will, steal your playoff hopes and dreams as long as he's on the field. And if they can keep him upright and Jamar Chase healthy, I think the other interesting thing last year is when Joe Burrow went down, that team did rally around Zach Taylor, and they did not quit. They did not throw in the towel with secondary quarterback play. They competed every single week, and that was really telling of what they think of Taylor. So I think that is a huge positive to take out of what was a very disappointing season for the Bengals last year. The Buffalo Bills at plus 700, that door is shut. Sorry, I know it's going to be unpopular. I thought last year it was closing. This year I'm looking at it, and Poyer's gone, right? Micah Hyde could be next. When you lose those veterans in the secondary for a defense that already looked kind of old and past where it was peak-wise, you have a defensive-minded head coach. They've been through a couple of offensive coordinators now in the last 2 years. I don't know, man. You take away Stephon Diggs as a threat in that offense, whether or not he was realistic that he was going to do anything. The Texans are very overrated. I love the Texans story. It was so much fun. The Dolphins, super fun. Play some defense, then I'll be impressed. Look, to me, it's the Chiefs, it's the Bengals, and I think an early wager on both of them makes a lot of sense. If you want to put the 2 units on the Chiefs and the 1 unit on the Bengals, I think that's a really interesting way to hedge the AFC.
I'd like to see the Colts number, and I would throw out the chalk, to use a horse racing term, and I would lean Baltimore, especially with the addition of Derrick Henry. I understand what you're saying about Jackson's frame not being able to withstand, but I think that his style, I don't think it's going to be mitigated, but I do think it's going to be modified with the addition or the supplement of Derrick Henry. Let's move on to the NFC here because there is a team at the bottom that is showing a very lovely plus number, and I want to hear your thoughts, but let's start at the top first.
Yes. Well, again, if you want to light your money on fire potentially for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this year, go ahead.
People
Since the
like
year
to hear.
2000, only one team has made it back from losing a Super Bowl into the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. That team, the New England Patriots, that quarterback, Tom Brady. So you could crumple that up and throw it out the window because there's nobody mentally tougher than Tom Brady. I'm sorry, it just isn't. He sat there for 3 hours in that roast, and he took a lot of shots, okay? I don't see Brock Purdy doing a roast anytime soon. I'm kidding. But look, the 49ers are still a great football team. However, the data just bears it out. Look at the Eagles a couple years ago. Look at the Rams a couple years ago. Look at the teams that were great that everybody thought was going to get there again and be there forever, and they weren't. Sometimes the air goes out of the balloon, and it's tough to pump it back up. And Kyle Shanahan continues to be the guy that thinks he's too cool for school, the guy that's the smartest guy in the room. You had the lead, you run the football. And sometimes it's the hard lessons, and sometimes people learn them, and sometimes people don't. And I've seen time and time again, Kyle Shanahan get in these situations in these big games and coach himself out of it, trying to be too cool for school. And at plus 250, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested in it. The Detroit Lions, though, I'm interested in at plus 600. Now, I want to see if Dan Campbell learns from his mishap, because guess what? The Green Bay Packers should have beaten the San Francisco 49ers last year. The Detroit Lions should have beaten the 49ers last year. The 49ers sneaked by. Let's not forget, in both those games were basically out of their reach, and good things happened to them with bad decision-making. And next thing you know, the 49ers are in the Super Bowl. So let's not anoint the 49ers like they're this perfect team. And those games, by the way, were at home in San Francisco. Okay? Now, Dan Campbell better learn from his mistake. The stuff you can do in the regular season, you can't do in the postseason. But I think if you watch the slow burn progress, Dan Campbell's a tough guy. Sometimes I think Dan Campbell's one of these guys that might have to learn the hard way, and I think he learned the hard way. They're in a great spot with one of the few places in the NFL that I think if you get home playoff games is an advantage. That place is going to be wild. Look how wild they were for that first playoff game. The whole city stopped. That is going to be a tough environment if they somehow can get the 1 seed, and I think they possibly can with the way that division looks this year. Packers are going to be good, but the rest of that division, again, rookie quarterback in Chicago, turnover in Minnesota, there's opportunity. The Cowboys at the end of the day. The Eagles at plus 700 are really interesting this year if you see a bounce back. Problems with the coordinators last year. But I do think still that young defense over time is going to figure it out. But there was a lot of turnover, a lot of youth on that defense. Yeah, they're all from Georgia, but they're all under 25 years old. The Atlanta Falcons at plus 1,100 are fun. And the Packers at plus 850 were a great story last year, but they are also a very young team. Now you have to play with expectations. Let's see how that impacts them. To me, it's the Eagles and the Lions at plus 600 and plus 700 that I'm most intrigued by, that I think are the most complete two teams in the NFC.
So then, if that is the Super Bowl, let's go and look at the Super Bowl. What is it, 59 this year? 1,000? Outright betting for the winner straight away. Who's it going to be? And let's look at the numbers.
Well, you know where I'm not going, to the favorites of the 49ers. No, thank you. I'm good. I love the Chiefs at plus 600. I think that's a great number. The Bengals, again, plus 1,300. Same as the Detroit Lions. Then you've got the Eagles at plus 1,400. The Packers, it's not that I think they can't get there and win. They can. I just think they're still a young team that still has some learning curve. And I think the young teams you saw last year that really popped off in the NFC and the AFC, right? The Houston Texans and the Green Bay Packers. Two teams that were told they shouldn't be there, and then they were. And that's great. But how often have we seen the next year, all of a sudden there's pressure, there's expectations. It's really easy to be the chaser, right? It's tough to be the champ at the top of the mountain. And you know what that's like. You were in that business for a long time, right? Sometimes it's good to chase, especially when you're told you can't do it. There's a hunger, there's a passion there that's not always there, I think, with some other teams that kind of get a little complacent. But when you put expectations on a team, they don't always react well. The Lions were in this place last year, ironically, where they had no expectations 2 years ago, outperformed, and then last year had expectations, and they lived up to them. I think that bodes very well for the Lions this year, too. And again, winning the Super Bowl is different. I still think the Chiefs, but getting there in the NFC, Lions might be the team to beat at the end of the day from the NFC. All right, let's talk a little bit more about fantasy and wagering and when they intersect here with some props for some players, because this hour we've got a lot of them. We're going to start here with the wide receivers, so don't go anywhere. More FST for you when we return on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt, his name is Joe, and this is the only show where the producer yells hot mics right in our ear as we come on. That gives us the energy to really get this show and grab it by the props. Let's grab it by the props, Joe. Now it is time to look at NFL. That got Joe excited. Wide receiver prop bets. I tried. And the reason why I like to have this conversation now, and it's great to get this thought process going, is because I firmly believe as wagerers, when we make these early future plays, this is where we can capitalize the most, because so many things happen from now until first kickoff that can change the landscape, if you will. So let's look at some of these wide receiver props. We're talking to Joe Pisapia here, the author of the Fantasy Black Book. Joe, let's start with Marvin Harrison Jr., because this is the one where I think the book is going to take in a windfall of handle. How do we handicap Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Well, it's tricky because the expectations are very high. We talked about him. I already have him ranked as a wide receiver 1, and Vegas is kind of telling you the same thing because these over-unders that they set for the props are basically projections, and they're setting them already at 1,000 yards receiving. And I think he can go over this in his first season if he's healthy and Kyler Murray healthy, regardless of the offensive line issues, and there are issues there still to work out. It's hard to imagine him not going over 1,000 yards this year, just from the sheer volume that he's going to have. And let's also keep in mind, too, in our brains, we keep thinking of 1,000 yards in the last couple, decades as a 16-game season, right? Well, now it's not, 17. So you have an extra game to get 1,000 yards. That used to be the standard, right? The 1,000 yards in a 16-game season. Well, now you have an extra game to get it. And I think he can absolutely do that. Minus 110 right now. I would go with the over on this. I think it's very reasonable for him to get to that number. And it's also telling you that Vegas sees things the same way as the fantasy community, which is this guy is going to be ready to be good from jump and to kind of take the world by storm, if you will. And already the projections of Fantasy Pros have him at 1,200 yards. So this is not close. This is, we're talking like a 200-yard difference, potentially.
Sure.
I don't know, a broken line, but a line where Vegas is protecting itself a little bit. But I think you smash the over right now on this before it scoots up to 1,050 to 1,100 and then ultimately closer to 12 as we get maybe to September, especially if he has some really good looks in the preseason and all of a sudden in training camp, things look really good. But the touchdown totals, again, 5.5. I would lean towards the over on that. you're getting a better number at the -112. But at the same time, touchdowns can be a little wacky sometimes. So I would stay away from that and instead just double up on the over on the 1,000 yards and the 1,500, because to me, I think that's the one you can really control. Touchdowns are tough to control. There's a lot of arbitrary moments that happen in a football game, but volume you can control. And I think that's always the thing to come back to in your wagering on a weekly basis when you're looking at individual performance of the games too. And the same thing, you step back and you look at the futures, it's the same thing. I can kind of get where the volume's coming from. The touchdowns at the end of the day, a little bit more volatile.
All right, that's what I wanted to hear. That's why I come to you for this type of analysis. Okay, now let's go down to Ja'Marr Chase, because this one here, Joe, it's contingent not so much upon Chase as it is upon the guy throwing him the ball. So let's look at some of the props for Ja'Marr Chase and have the conversation.
Well, the fantasy projections right now have him at Fantasy Pros over 1,300 yards. The over-under right now is set at 1,275 for the over, 1,300 and a half for the under. Again, these are the best numbers you can get over at bettingpros.com right now, where it shows you the different houses. So to me, this is a hard one because it's testing our faith again. And every year we're optimistic, and every year we kind of get punched in the nuts about this when it comes to Ja'Marr Chase. And it's just a fact, we are. And I'm going to once again somehow find a way to be positive again and think that, yeah, we're going to get there. The talent's too good. The luck has been too bad. Something's got to give here eventually, and I think it's going to give this year. So I will take the over at the 1,275 there, and I think that that's a high number, but I think it's a very achievable one. And he could smash this. He could have 1,500 if everything breaks right here for this team, especially if T. Higgins is somewhere else, which still possibly is on the radar to happen. So we'll see how that goes, but to me, I'm the over. The touchdown total, again, 8.5. I think that's spot on, so that's a big stay away from me because too arbitrary, too good of a number. I think it's going to be somewhere in that 8 to 10 range. You are really kind of threading the needle with that one, so I'm just going to stay away. But I will say this. If you are somebody that just really believes in Ja'Marr Chase and you think this 1,275 is going to look like 1,500, then you might as well go over on the receiving touchdowns too, because it's going to be so enormous level of a volume that probably the touchdowns will come with it too, and it'll probably be closer to double digits.
All right, now let's talk about, this is interesting, let's talk about Nico Collins. With all of the additions and some of the subtractions here, how do we handicap Collins now in this offensive ecosystem?
I love Nico Collins. I don't care if Stephon Diggs is there. Nico Collins is still the number one guy. Last year he had 8 touchdowns, 1,297 yards. And just because, look, Stephon Diggs showed you at the end of the year that he's, I won't say done, but he is on the downside of his career. He's played more than a decade, and that's always concerns us every year with Mike Evans too. But Evans so far seems to be the outlier, where Diggs kind of fell right into the trap of, the guy was going to fade in the second half when he has the 10 years under his belt, and he's got it. Like, he's right there at that age. The same thing with Hopkins, the same thing we've seen over these other guys. AJ Green, like all these guys, at a certain point, you see that decline. I think you start to see with Diggs. So this is a gift. The over on the 950.5, he's going to be well over 1,000. They're going to have to throw the football still. I know Mixon's there too, but it's going to be a more competitive division than people realize. Colts are going to be good. Jaguars look to be improved. So there's going to be a lot more competition here. I would stay away from the touchdown total, 6.5. If I had a lean, it would be the over. 950, I'm definitely on an over. And then Drake London's another guy I'm very bullish on, where I think projections are too low. 975.5, I would go over on this one as well. Receiving touchdowns, 6.5. That's another one too. I think the number's very good. 6 and 7, that's kind of where it feels like he could have a prolific year. But with Pitts there too, who I think is going to be really good in the red zone, and Bijan Robinson, I'm just going to stay away from that number. But 975.5, he can absolutely go over this with Kirk Cousins. So Cousins addition there makes a huge impact on London. But London and Collins, those are two guys to me that right now the market is undervaluing. They're taking too much into account the big name of Stephon Diggs coming into town. I don't care. Tank Dell coming back, sure, he's fun. But Nico Collins is the go-to guy in that offense. And if you think otherwise, I think you're doing it wrong. And you're seeing the early rankings show you there's opportunity with Nico Collins to draft him at a discount. So take it wherever you can. We come back. The running back props right here on FST.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, welcome back into Fantasy Sports Today. FST, Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here, giving you a complete breakdown of the upcoming NFL season. Everything you need is right here. And coming at the turn of the month, I do believe in June, the Fantasy Black Book will be available for football, so make sure you mark your calendars for that. Right now, we're talking about what happens when there is a vacuum in a space. What happens when something leaves to create shelf space, if you will. Joe, I think it's great to look at these running back props because at some point, a big name is going to get injured, and it's going to open a door for something different. Let's look at some of these props here. We start with Christian McCaffrey. We'll look at his rushing yards. We'll look at his total rushing yards, total receiving yards, and on we'll go. And let's have the conversation. Let's go.
Look, he had a phenomenal season last year. Christian McCaffrey was over 1,400 rushing yards last year. He led the league in rushing yards. So for him to lead it again, it's 3-1 odds. I would shy away from that and instead go for the rushing yard total, which is 1,200, which I think is a pretty reasonable number. So we're going to say there's going to be regression of 259 yards year over year. That I can live with as an over. I think that is a much better investment, much safer investment. Is it as sexy as the 3-1? No, because you're getting minus 110 on it. So again, it's more of an investment than a bet, quote unquote. But Derrick Henry is really intriguing with the Baltimore Ravens. This is an offense. The problem is the Tennessee Titans couldn't move the chains. So no matter how good Derrick Henry was, his opportunities were limited. When Lamar Jackson can take a 3rd and long and turn it into a 1st down on his own, there's more opportunities for Derrick Henry. It's going to keep on the field more. And you could have a situation where Derrick Henry gets back to being that guy that leads the leagues and going back to that 1,400 yard guy. So he could get back into that conversation. It's hard because there's not a lot of bell cow running backs, a lot of 3-down backs, a lot of teams that want to run the football. So you are limited in your choices there of who is going to lead the league in rushing. But I think the over on the 1,200 and a half, for Christian McCaffrey makes a lot of sense. The receiving yards is 500 and a half. Last year, 564. I would go maybe on the under on that one. Again, a little bit of regression here, potentially, and I think that certainly could be the case. They did draft Ricky Pearsall too, so if Debo's there and Kittle's there and Ayuk's there and Pearsall's there, McCaffrey's still going to work in the passing game a lot. But they're going to scale back a little bit. I think it would be smart, especially trying to get him through playoffs if they have their designs on that, and I know they do. Total rushing touchdowns, 10.5. That's the number. Now, that's an interesting number. Last year, he had 21 total touchdowns. So of all the numbers where typically I'm staying away from touchdowns, 10.5 for Christian McCaffrey is total rushing touchdowns. Again, we're talking about 14 last year, combined 21. I would look for the combined number and see if we could do that instead. For the rushing touchdowns at 10.5, I think I would still go the over on that. I mean, that's a 4 difference from last year. And you saw the goal line, they're willing to use him. So I think as long as he's healthy, that's a good one. Then total receiving touchdowns, 5.5. That one I would stay away from because it's too close. So Christian McCaffrey, again, I think the best thing to do is just look for that rushing yards total at minus money and take that instead. Other running backs here, Breece Hall, another guy to talk about. Breece Hall, plus 600, most rushing yards. That's an interesting guy because the Jets are going to run the football, play defense, and then run the football some more. And Aaron Rodgers is on his last leg. Can I say that? Can I say that? Is that okay? Because I just said it.
He's going to come
900. Let it. I'll see him in the ring. 975.5 minus 115. That would be the over for me. I'm very excited about this one. The receiving yards plus 500.5. That one I would stay away from because you just don't know what the dynamic of this offense is because we haven't seen it yet. And my concern with the age of Aaron Rodgers is real. They brought in a more capable backup finally, but still the 500.5 I would stay away from. Instead, 975.5 minus 115 rushing yards. I think he is a 1,000-yard rusher. Even if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play a full season, you're still going to have to rely heavily on this run game. So for me, that's the best one. Rushing touchdowns, 7.5. Again, the Jets were one of the worst offenses in football last year. Can we get 8 touchdowns for him? Probably. Do I want to bet on it? No. So I'm just going to, again, stay with the totals here because I think those are our best wagers, man.
All right, with the time that we have left, is there another name? I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a good one that we can take a look at because there's going to be a lot of money coming in. Just the excitability of this team and the city in which they play is enough to entice wagerers.
Yeah, Gibbs is a guy right now, the 5th running back going off the board. Last year had a really solid season. Again, more of a second-half guy, but 52 receptions, 316 yards, 945 rushing yards. So he's already, again, 945 last year as a rookie. Now that number is 800.5. Smash that over. Smash it with Jahmyr Gibbs. You can let go of the receiving ones, the total touchdowns, the rushing touchdowns. Look for the cumulative numbers and smash them. When we come back, wide receiver, quarterback props, more to come.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the 2nd or 3rd inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a 1-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate the upcoming NFL season, whether it be season-long fantasy, DFS, or wagering. Right now, we are knee-deep looking at props. We've gotten some wide receivers. We've talked running backs. Now it's time for the quarterback props. And Joe, this to me, this conversation can be attached to the wide receiver conversation, to the overall offensive ecosystem conversation, but QB talk is where it's at. Let's start and end right here. What do you got?
Oh, I've got the leap of faith here with the Colts, a team that I'm very high on this year. Anthony Richardson is capable of wrecking games. We had just a little taste of it. He is a guy that is as talented and freakish of an athlete as he is really smart and really hardworking and all of those. Every impressive box the guy kind of ticks off. Now, the problem is he didn't get enough time to play last year. And that hurts him, not just because, the development, but also hurts because you want him to have that confidence when he goes out there. I don't think confidence is too big of a problem for Anthony Richardson. So a lot of these numbers, Matt, are based on my confidence in Shane Steichen and my confidence in Anthony Richardson. So when you're looking for him, total rushing yards right now, 525.5. This is an over for me. The total passing yards, low number, 3,100.5. This is an over for me. And it's because at the end of the day, I do believe this is the kind of quarterback that can transcend those numbers. I'm not saying it's always going to be pretty. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. There will be peaks and valleys. There'll be some bad games. But the great games are going to be unbelievable for Anthony Richardson, and I think that's enough to carry him over these totals.
All right. Now, Joe is going to stand by what he says. And what I love about what we do here at SportsGrid, especially our great social media team, is we clip a lot of the things that Joe says. So we can hold Joe's feet to the fire. When Joe is on a player, he'll be the first one to tell you. But when he's off and he's wrong, he'll also be the first one to tell you. So I want to know, I want them to clip your Jaden Daniels preseason prop perspective. Alliteration aside, of course.
Excellent alliteration. Should never be tossed aside how good the alliteration can be. With Jane Daniels, again, I'm talking about a really special athlete, but a guy that also has got to evolve his style a little bit when he runs and he's out there in space. So this is a player I think you look at and you say to yourself, all right, you got to learn to slide a little bit more. The hits you took at the college level are going to put you out of the game at the NFL level. And you don't want that to happen if you're Washington. I do think they're going to run the football a lot. I think Jaden Daniels is going to run the football a lot. So when you're looking at all these props that are out there for him, the most intriguing one to me, again, is the rushing total, 500.5. That's the one that I come back to at minus 110. And I want to circle that because I think he can go well over this. We're talking 600, maybe even 700 potentially. If you think of what Justin Fields did a few years ago, well, he was that quarterback that just kind of came off the waiver wire in single quarterback leagues and just kind of obliterated fantasy leagues. I think Jaden Daniels can be that guy this year. And he's got some good talent around him. And I like the second time around head coaches, especially ones that were really good coordinators. Like Dan Quinn's a good football guy. Unfortunately for Dan Quinn, sometimes that first coaching job doesn't always work out the way you want it to. This is an opportunity here where I think you learn from some mistakes. You have some pieces here in Washington. Terry McLaurin's really good. Brian Robinson Jr. is an interesting prospect still. But Jaden Daniels is a really dynamic athlete. He's a really good runner of the football, and I think that alone is the one I would look to. The 31-40 passing total, I think, is right there. I would probably stay away from that. I think that's a really good number. I think you're going to be within like 50 to 100 yards of that, and that's too close for me. But the rushing total, 500, I just think is way too low. So as long as he stays healthy, that's a good one. In terms of passing touchdowns, too, 19.5. Sounds pretty good. If anything, I might lean towards the under just slightly because, again, I do believe that he's going to have a lot of rushing touchdowns. So, to me, Jaden Daniels, I'm focusing on the rushing because I think that's something we can control, whereas the passing is still a little bit more of an unknown.
All right, from a couple of young bucks, let's go to the top rope and walk old school now. We got a couple of more established names on the back end here, and this is really going to be very important because so many people are going to get it wrong on Patrick Mahomes. How do we get it right?
Well, we get it right by looking at the history of Patrick Mahomes. It's been a couple of years since Tyreek Hill was there now. It's not one season, it's a couple. And I keep coming back to, he threw for 5,000 yards in 2022. Now, I'm not saying he's going to do that again necessarily, but he's going to throw for more than 4,350. I mean, 4,350? What is this? 4,350 and a half. I mean, smash this over. Most passing yards the season plus 500. I think you could certainly go to that. Passing touchdowns, again, that's the one I might come back to a little bit and shy away from. It's possible, but I think more unlikely. Passing yards, though, it's just a smash. Even if there's still regression, right? Even if he doesn't get back to being the 4,800 guy or the 5,000 club guy, can he get over 4,300? Yeah, he absolutely can. So I'm going right back in there. I think they've done enough in the draft, enough with turning things over and moving on with some of the guys that just weren't going to get the job done. The total passing touchdowns number 34.5 too. I do think he's going to go over this. So my lean would be over. But if I'm investing in one thing, once again, I'm coming to the cumulative totals because you can control that. You have historical data on it. You know what this offense is going to be. You know they're going to throw the football first. Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco is still there, but Pacheco still has some injury issues over the years, and his running style certainly doesn't hold up necessarily over 17 games for his body frame. So there's going to be times where they're going to be missing him too and have to rely even more on Patrick Mahomes. So over 43.50.5. To me, this is one of the best wagers you're going to find on the board in the quarterback market.
All right. While all of this quarterback talk begs wide receiver speculation, perhaps none more than this next player and his counterpart. Let's talk Joe Burrow, and what does it mean for Ja'Marr Chase?
Well, that's the thing, right? If we're in on the Chase stuff, we got to be in on the Burrow stuff. For Joe Burrow, comeback player of the year plus 200, that's an interesting one there to put out there. He's one of the favorites for that award. Most passing touchdowns plus 700. Again, good number there, potential there. Joe Mixon's gone. Now Zach Moss is there. So you could see Joe Burrow throwing a lot. And I think Joe Burrow is kind of a man on a mission this year. Most passing yards plus 850. That's the number there for him. And then you're looking at the total passing yards. The number is 4,500, minus 115. Again, it's an over. And I feel like I'm being a broken record here with some of these. But what I've tried to do here is stay away from the good numbers. Look for the numbers that are clearly off and the ones that you clearly want to go above. If Joe Burrow's healthy and playing 17 games, there's no way he doesn't go over this number. Just no way. So to me, this is another easy one here. 27.5 passing touchdowns. That's another one too, I think would be the over. Because if he does play 17 games, he's going to go over this. He's going to be in the 30s. That's who Joe Burrow is. You know, Jermaine Burton is a really interesting player they drafted too. So T. Higgins, Ja'Marr Chase, Burton, that's a lot. They've got some tight end help they haven't had in a while. The offensive line continues to make improvements. So there's reasons to be optimistic here. But when you're looking at Mahomes, you're looking at Joe Burrow, and you're looking at these numbers that are so low, I understand if you're afraid of the Jaden Daniels or the Anthony Richardson numbers. I get that. But those are because you just don't know who that player is. So instead, you focus on what you do know about the player and know that the rushing equity of that player is something you can invest in. But when it comes to Mahomes, when it comes to Joe Burrow, we've seen it. We already know who these guys are. So to me, Matt, it's a no-brainer. It's easy to invest in those type of players.
Well, I love the conversation. Now, when we wager, we also have to remember, it's more so, I think, in baseball, but public teams, public players are always going to command more handle. So let me steer it back to our neck of the woods. Let's talk New York, New Jersey. Give me your line, if you were a bookmaker, for Aaron Rodgers. Give me his line of total passing yards, total touchdowns, and maybe compare it to Daniel Jones. Who's going to have the better season? And give me some numbers.
Oh, boy, that's the real tricky one. In the local guys here in the New York area, I mean, it would be silly not to put Aaron Rodgers ahead of him in terms of passing yards, also because of what he has to work with. So it's easy for that. But I don't think he's a 4,000-yard passer anymore. Not in that Jets offense, not the way they're going to want to run things. So he's probably more like that. That guy in that 3,500 range at this point in his career. And Daniel Jones is probably somebody in that 31 range too, because of, again, what he doesn't have around him. When we come back, we continue to look at the futures board right here on FSD.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate the upcoming National Football League season. Right now, we are talking in the wagering realm. And Joe, what I love about having these conversations with you this early is that all the plus money is there. And now is the time to get in, because you know it, I know it. These numbers change as soon as a news ticker comes out across the bottom of your television or across your device. Boom, numbers change. Let's go to NFL futures. Let's start with the AP NFL MVP, looking at the odds and the leaderboard here. Top two names are the same, but that third name is going to pull in a lot of money, Joe.
Yeah, it might, but the third name being CJ Stroud, I don't know if that's where I want to go quite yet. I think that's putting a lot on the young kid. I don't even know if it's a team I like to win that division, because I like the Colts. I'll come back to it again. The Houston Texans were maybe the story of 2023, but it's 2024, and we've got to look at what's on the field here. And I love CJ Stroud. I mean, this is tough for me, because I was the defender of CJ Stroud during the draft last year, during mini camp last year, during NFL drafts, dynasty leagues, all that stuff that I said CJ Stroud's the best quarterback in this class, and he's going to have the most impact right away. But Anthony Richardson is the guy that over time is going to have that ability to do something maybe we've never seen. But the most polished guy coming into the league was CJ Stroud. It was just easy to watch the combine and see that. And he's got a lot of weapons. So maybe CJ Stroud is somebody we really should consider more for this award. But what I like to do here at MVP, and I do it every single year, is I find two guys, and they're always quarterbacks because it's a quarterback award, that I invest in that I know the number is going to shrink. Typically that person, number one, is always Patrick Mahomes and somebody else. And this year is the first year in a couple where Patrick Mahomes is under 600. Typically it's 600. Even last year was plus 700 for Patrick Mahomes this early last year. It's starting off on plus 500. So if Patrick Mahomes is starting off at plus 500 in Vegas, and we looked at some of those numbers for him earlier in the passing totals, don't you think that seems kind of curious? Don't you think it seems like those numbers are off? That they're telling you he's potentially the favorite for MVP, and yes, he's the very public player, and yes, they've won a lot. They are going for something very special. This three-peat is very special to them. They are focused on it. They were talking about it as soon as the Super Bowl ended, and I think it's something we should be talking about too. Josh Allen, I will fade away from that plus 800. Maybe he'll have this transcendent season and become the quarterback everybody wants him to be, where he just makes all the pieces around him better. Maybe. I got to see it. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, has all the pieces to compete, has the ability to continue to handle their business in the AFC. Now, it's a very competitive division. It's another thing Patrick Mahomes has going for him is he plays in a weaker division than the AFC North is.
Good point.
But Joe Burrow at 10-1, really intriguing. Look, Lamar continues to be statistically really interesting. I just wonder if he starts to lose some of those touchdowns that he's had over the years to Derrick Henry, a very different running back than they've had. They have pieced it together with everybody from Mark Ingram to Gus Edwards to J.K. Dobbins over the years. I mean, it's been a who's who of retreads and veterans and just another guy. But they've never had a Derrick Henry. So that's going to be different. And I don't know if it's going to eat into a little of the success around him. Christian McCaffrey theoretically should have been in this conversation more, but he's just not because he's not a quarterback, and that's typically not what happens. But early on, Mahomes is the guy that I would circle. He's the early investment for me because I do think by the time we get to midseason, that number is going to be more like 2-1, and you can always cash out if you don't want to see it all the way through on some sites. And then Joe Burrow at 10-1, I see that number shrinking as well. So those are the two guys I would invest in early for MVP.
All right, so now the MVP conversation is going to beg the Offensive Player of the Year conversation. So let's look at the favorites, let's look at the long shots, and let's understand, because you made a great point saying that the MVP is usually a quarterback's award. The Offensive Player of the Year, on the other hand, opens up the door to a much larger field, Joe.
It does. I think Anthony Richardson is a guy you keep in mind for this award too. He might statistically be really interesting, but they might not have as many wins at the end of the day. If the Chiefs win 13 games and the Colts win, 11, it's going to be probably a Patrick Mahomes kind of award. But the other names here are, the usual suspects, the first round talents. You got Tyreek Hill plus 700. You got Christian McCaffrey at 9. You got CeeDee Lamb at 10-1, along with Justin Jefferson and Chase at 1,200. Chase has been that guy for a couple of years I've invested in. Now, we got this right a couple of years ago when we invested in Justin Jefferson, and we crushed it. I don't want to do that this year, not with McCarthy and Darnold. I don't think we can do that quite yet. I hope I'm wrong for Justin Jefferson's sake. I just don't think we can get there. Chase at 1,200 is really intriguing. That's the guy that I would circle. CeeDee Lamb would be the other one at 10-1. Those are the two favorites I like. But if you start to look at the long shots, there's some interesting names here. And I'm going to come back to the guy that doesn't get enough credit. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 20-1. His stats are right there with those guys every single year. And if the Lions have the 1 seed in the NFC as the script I'm writing here, man, maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown finally starts to get some of that recognition he deserves along with it. So that is something I think to keep an eye on. At 20-1, is this number going to shrink? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now this draft class was one of the most exciting draft classes in recent memory. Let's take a look at some of the new faces in the league and who can we see for maybe a Rookie of the Year, offensive Rookie of the Year. Who could it be?
Look, it's really tough not to give it to a quarterback a lot of the times. These quarterbacks are starting out of the gate. So you have Caleb Williams already at plus 150, which is not intriguing to me. We're already almost at even money for him. I don't know. I think Caleb Williams is great. I just don't know if the Bears is the right place for him to be great in the NFL. Right. I think that's the best way I can say it. And I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying I'm more skeptical than others. Well, I mean, Trevor Lawrence was great too. I did not think that Jacksonville was the best place for him to be great. And I'm still not sure if it is. Jaden Daniels at plus 600. Now that's more interesting. Jaden Daniels might have a really big impact on the season. And again, if he has 600, 700 rushing yards, becomes a guy like Justin Fields that everybody was talking about a few years ago, that could be really intriguing. Marvin Harrison Jr. is where I want to live. Plus 700. That's a guy that I think you can lock in, and I think you know what you're getting. Vegas is already telling you the floor is 1,000 yards. The fantasy community is already telling you he's a wide receiver 1. So let's embrace it. I mean, 7-1, those are really good odds. Are they going to shrink? Yes. Is this a one I want to see to its fruition? Yes. So despite all the quarterback hoopla, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the guy that might be the safest of all those investments for the Rookie of the Year awards. We come back, we're going to look at the defensive side and the head coaches to close things out here on our NFL special here on FST.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid. Great.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you a very comprehensive, detailed outlook ahead of the upcoming NFL season. It is almost time to close the book, and then Joe has to hop out, get some ice, get a few things. Lots of people coming over. You know I'm going to be there, baby. But let's look at the NFL futures here. We talked about Offensive Rookie of the Year, so let's immediately go to the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a three-person conversation, maybe four, but I'll let you take the reins here.
It is. It's typically the person who's going to lead the league in sacks. You know, that's usually what we're looking for nowadays. Micah Parsons was the guy that I invested in heavily last year, and for a while he was at the top of the board and then faded at the end, unfortunately. But again, you're getting a really good number on him again this year. So I think you can invest just like in MVP. Same thing. You could find two guys here. So it'd be Micah Parsons and Garrett for me, or Micah Parsons and TJ Watt for me. Those would be the two places I would go. Aiden Hutchinson at plus 1,600 is interesting, though. Because if you look at some of the other sack data, like the expected sacks that he should have had last year, or if you're looking at the pressure rates, you know, all of those like granular, nerdy stats on the defensive side, Aiden Hutchinson should have been close to the league leader in sacks last year. So that's one little nugget I'm going to throw out. 16-1, really interesting number there on Hutchinson. So maybe you circle that one too as a third one. You throw a unit on and just see if it grows. Because other than that, it is the usual suspects at the top. Parsons at 600. Again, you've got 700 Myles Garrett and 800 TJ Watt. TJ Watt's had some issues staying healthy, so I would favor Garrett personally. But TJ Watt's still a spectacular player. But that's kind of the way I see the Defensive Player of the Year board.
All right, throw a unit on it and see if it grows. I like that advice. Now let's go to the Defensive Rookie of the Year. And what I love about this is there's going to be names that, listen, if we poll 100 people, 99 of them are not going to know these names, but understanding the defenses overall is really going to help us, Joe. NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Learn us something.
This wasn't an elite level class in terms of defense this year, like we've seen in the past, where you have the Aiden Hutchinsons of the world come in the league and guys are just going to take the league by storm. So somebody might catch us by surprise. Dallas Turner's at the top at plus 430, Latu's at plus 500. Jared Verse at 1,200 could certainly be a guy that could get a lot of sacks. And then you have cornerbacks like Quinyon Mitchell at plus 1,200. The hard thing with a guy like Mitchell is he would have to become he is an elite level talent, but he'd have to immediately in year one be a shutdown corner, which he could very well be. And he's in a city in Philadelphia where there's enough narrative to build around that. So he's intriguing, but right now I think this is a wait for me. I don't see enough early value where it's very clear who that guy could be. And last year I was very clear. It was Carter. And it was Carter from day one for me. It was Carter at the end of the year. It was Carter. And that's how it went. So that was a very different year-over-year look at this award. I don't have that same kind of feeling. Jalen Carter to me was that guy last year, and we were in on it in the beginning, and it worked. This year, it does not feel the same to me. Some interesting names, but to me, it's a tough one to invest currently. Let's see how preseason works out. Let's see how everyone is healthy and what they look like in their defenses when they start the season. And then we'll revisit this maybe in October.
Okay. All right, no get Carter for Joe this season as of now. But now let's close it out with the NFL Coach of the Year, because you have to believe that the Coach of the Year is going to be a part of an exceptional football club. Who's it going to be?
Well, what's the special sauce, right? A team with low expectations that comes away much better than people realize, maybe wins a division or something to that effect. Now, Raheem Morris is up at the top there, but Raheem Morris and the Falcons have a very easy schedule in an easy division. So I don't want to anoint them necessarily. 10-1 is great. I'm going to look at Shane Steichen at plus 1,400. I think the Colts could be really good this year. I think Shane Steichen is one of the best offensive minds in football. And if you don't think so, go back and look at the Eagles 2 years ago when he was the offensive coordinator and what they became last year when he wasn't. Shane Steichen is that dude. So I think you're in a really good position there. Harbaugh is a fun name. You know, I don't think the Cardinals are getting to playoffs, so I'm going to fade away from Jonathan Gannon. LaFleur plus 1,600, I don't think is giving him enough respect for what he did last year with that young football team.
Right.
But if I'm going to pick one guy for the early investment, it's going to be Shane Steichen at plus 1,400. That's a great number. Do I think they can win the division? I do. And that would mean a lot, too, because they'd be unseating DeMeco Ryans at plus 1,400 and the Houston Texans, a team that came out of nowhere last year. So the Colts aren't coming out of nowhere. Colts have expectations, but I think the Colts are really going to blow away the field at the end of the day. So a fun look at the NFL fantasy season, the NFL wagering season, all of the above. We hope everyone enjoys the weekend here and uses this knowledge in your best ball drafts early on, your dynasty startups, and your early NFL wagers, because there's a lot to learn. That'll do it for us, but the story of the year goes on for the NFL. We'll be here for it. For Matt, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks.
Stonian versus the book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. It's your quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the book.
And now you have to qualify in these majors. You got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness. And I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
this
late
sort
night.
Of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smart.